everyone. It's so special, they make me more and more special, to be Filipino is something I take so much pride in.
We're so proud of you. We're super proud of you, Alex. Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you.
Today, I extend my congratulations to the two.
Explosive scenes at the 33rd Southeast Asian Games transformed a historic sporting triumph into a moment that stunned the entire region and sent shockwaves far beyond tennis. Welcome back, where we break down the stories that matter, the moments that define champions, and the controversies others are afraid to touch. What unfolded in Bangkok was not just sports drama and not merely political tension. It was an unprecedented collision of national pride, elite athletic excellence, media aggression, and presidential authority. This was the kind of moment that will be studied, debated, and replayed for years, because it crossed lines few ever dare to cross. At the center of it all stood 20-year-old Alex Eala, a young champion living the greatest moment of her career, and Philippine President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., who would soon take an action no one in that room expected. To fully grasp the magnitude of what happened, we need to rewind and understand the pressure cooker that had been building throughout these games. The Southeast Asian Games are officially meant to symbolize unity, sportsmanship, and regional pride. But in reality, when medals are on the line and the host nation carries enormous expectations, emotions can boil over quickly. Thailand entered these games determined to dominate, especially on home soil, where roaring crowds and familiar conditions created a powerful advantage. Nowhere was that intensity more apparent than at the National Tennis Development Center in Bangkok, which became a fortress for Thai athletes and an intimidating arena for their opponents. From the very start of the tennis competition, the environment was hostile. Every rally involving a Thai player was met with thunderous cheers, while mistakes by visiting athletes were celebrated loudly. The noise never stopped. It pressed down on players like a physical weight, designed to disrupt rhythm and confidence. This was not subtle encouragement. It was psychological warfare, and standing right in the middle of it was Alex Eala, the Philippines' brightest tennis star and the clear favorite for gold. Alex Eala is not a surprise contender or a lucky outsider. She is a world-class athlete who earned her reputation through years of elite training and international competition. Ranked among the top players globally, she trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain and competed on the WTA Tour long before arriving at the SEA Games. From a young age, she carried the hopes of more than 110 million Filipinos, and by the time she arrived in Bangkok, she carried something even heavier. The Philippines had not won a women's singles tennis gold medal at the SEA Games since 1999. 26 years of waiting had turned into a national obsession, and Eala was the one athlete capable of ending that drought. As the tournament unfolded, Eala performed with ruthless efficiency. She didn't just win matches, she controlled them. In the quarterfinals, she dismantled her opponent with precision, barely allowing the crowd a moment to rally against her. The semifinals followed the same script. Her movement was sharp, her forehand devastating, and her composure unwavering. With each victory, excitement back home grew louder, while tension inside the Bangkok venue thickened. The Thai crowd could sense what was happening. Their hopes of a home gold were slipping away, point by point, taken by a calm, focused Filipino champion who refused to be intimidated. By the time the final arrived, the atmosphere inside the stadium was explosive. Eala faced Thailand's last remaining hope, a local favorite backed by a crowd packed beyond capacity. Every seat was filled, spectators lined the aisles, and drums pounded relentlessly. Chants echoed from every corner of the arena. Each time Eala prepared to serve, the noise surged, deliberately timed to disrupt her concentration. This went beyond passionate support. It was relentless pressure designed to break her mentally before she could break her opponent. Watching from the VIP section was President Bongbong Marcos Jr., who had traveled to Thailand to support the Philippine delegation. To some observers, his presence seemed ceremonial, a routine show of national support. But Marcos understood the deeper significance of the moment. This was not just about tennis. This was about dignity, resilience, and how a young athlete representing her country would be treated on foreign soil under immense pressure. When the gold medal match began, it immediately felt more like a battle than a sporting contest. The Thai player played with desperation and energy, retrieving shots that seemed impossible and feeding off every roar from the crowd. The noise was constant, overwhelming, and unforgiving. At the same time, questionable line calls began to surface, many of them favoring the home player and igniting visible frustration among the Philippine coaching staff. The crowd sensed momentum shifting and grew even louder, believing controversy might tip the balance. What separated Alex Eala from everyone else in that moment was her response. Instead of losing focus, she elevated her game. She stopped playing safe and began striking the ball with authority, hitting winners so clean and precise that no line call could erase them. Shot after shot painted the lines, leaving no room for debate. Slowly, methodically, she dismantled her opponent. When she finally unleashed the winning forehand to seal the match in straight sets, the release of emotion was overwhelming. Eala dropped to her knees, tears flowing freely, the weight of 26 years lifting from her shoulders. She had conquered hostile territory, intense pressure, and the burden of history. The Philippines had its gold medal. But victory did not bring relief to the arena. The handshake at the net was cold and perfunctory. The medal ceremony was tense, with officials struggling to hide their disappointment as they placed the gold medal around Eala's neck. The crowd, once deafening, fell into an uneasy silence. The match was over, but the emotional storm was only beginning. As journalists gathered for the post-match press conference, the mood shifted dramatically. Press conferences are usually predictable, filled with polite questions and rehearsed answers. This one felt different from the moment it began. Thai journalists carried wounded pride, international media sensed controversy, and Eala sat at the podium still glowing from victory, unaware of the ambush ahead. What should have been a celebration of excellence was about to turn into a confrontation that would overshadow the entire tournament and ignite an international debate. The press conference room in Bangkok carried a tension that felt heavier than the air inside the stadium moments earlier. Rows of journalists packed the space, cameras already rolling, lights glaring down on the podium where Alex Eala sat with her gold medal still hanging from her neck. Her face showed exhaustion mixed with quiet pride, the look of an athlete who had just delivered the performance of her life. Beside her were coaches and officials, all expecting the usual questions about tactics, preparation, and what the victory meant for her country. But something about the room felt off. The smiles were forced, the whispers sharper, and the energy unmistakably hostile. Among the journalists present was a veteran Thai reporter known throughout the region for his aggressive style and confrontational approach. For decades, he had built a reputation as someone who did not back down, someone who relished putting powerful figures on the defensive. Politicians, executives, and public figures had all felt the sting of his questioning. To him, a young athlete fresh off an emotional victory looked less like a champion and more like an easy target. As he reached for the microphone, several reporters exchanged uneasy glances, sensing that this was not going to be a routine exchange. When he began to speak, it was immediately clear that this was not a question. It was an accusation disguised as commentary. He started by downplaying the victory, suggesting the tournament draw had been unusually favorable and implying that injuries to other players had cleared the path for Eala's gold. He spoke with a tone of authority, as if rewriting the narrative in real time, planting doubt where celebration should have been. The room grew quieter with every sentence, the discomfort spreading like a slow ripple. Then he escalated. He shifted toward officiating, bizarrely hinting that decisions might have benefited Eala, despite the widely visible controversies that had gone against her during the final. The suggestion was not subtle. It was gaslighting, an attempt to flip reality on its head and undermine what millions had just watched unfold. Some journalists lowered their eyes, others stiffened in their seats. This was no longer tough questioning. This was an effort to delegitimize a historic achievement. But he didn't stop there. The attack turned personal. He criticized Eala's demeanor on court, labeling her celebrations as disrespectful to the host nation. He questioned her sportsmanship, insinuating arrogance where there had been composure. Each sentence landed heavier than the last, no longer aimed at performance but at character. These were not inquiries seeking clarification. They were declarations designed to wound, delivered with a confidence that suggested he expected no resistance. Alex Eala's expression changed. The smile that had survived the final moments of the match slowly faded. Her eyes glistened, no longer with tears of joy but with hurt and confusion. She glanced briefly toward her coaches, searching for support, but they appeared just as stunned. How do you respond when your greatest triumph is being publicly stripped away, piece by piece, under the guise of journalism? The room remained silent, as if frozen, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch the spectacle unfold. The journalist continued, pointing now, his voice rising slightly as cameras captured every second. It was clear he was performing for an audience beyond the room, playing to wounded national pride after a painful defeat. Since victory could not be claimed on the court, humiliation would have to suffice off it. His aim was obvious: to break down a 20-year-old champion on live broadcast and reclaim a sense of dominance through words. What he failed to account for was who else was listening. Off to the side of the podium sat Philippine President Bongbong Marcos Jr., maintaining the composed posture expected of a head of state at an international event. Until that moment, he had remained quiet, smiling politely, allowing the process to unfold. But as the attacks grew more personal, something shifted. The smile disappeared. His jaw tightened. His gaze locked onto the journalist with unmistakable focus. Several people in the room would later describe the sensation as the temperature suddenly dropping. Then it happened. President Marcos stood up. Not abruptly, not in anger, but with deliberate calm. The scrape of his chair against the floor cut sharply through the journalist's voice. Heads turned. Cameras swung. Security personnel stiffened, uncertain whether to move. For a split second, the journalist hesitated, registering that the Philippine president was walking directly toward him. But arrogance and habit took over, and he continued speaking, convinced that his position would shield him from consequence. That assumption proved disastrously wrong. President Marcos closed the distance without hesitation and reached out. In one decisive motion, he grabbed the microphone and pulled it from the journalist's hand. The sound echoed through the speakers, loud and abrupt, like a warning shot. The journalist was left frozen mid-sentence, mouth slightly open, arms still raised where the microphone had been. Gasps rippled across the room as cameras fired non-stop, capturing an image no one expected to see. For the first time in his career, the journalist was completely silenced. He looked at his empty hand, then up at the president standing before him. There was no shouting, no dramatic gesture, just absolute authority. The room was paralyzed, unsure how to process a foreign head of state physically intervening in a press conference on Thai soil. President Marcos held the microphone calmly, not as someone seeking attention, but as someone establishing a boundary. He did not raise his voice. He did not launch into a speech. He simply looked directly at the journalist, then slowly scanned the room, ensuring everyone understood what was about to be said. Then he delivered 12 words that would echo far beyond that press conference. "I will not allow anyone to attack her unfairly." The simplicity of the statement was its power. There was no debate, no explanation, no justification. It was a declaration. In that moment, protocol, diplomacy, and political calculation took a back seat to protection and principle. The message was unmistakable. This young champion would not be bullied. Not here. Not now. Not on his watch. After speaking, President Marcos did not return the microphone to the journalist. Instead, he placed it firmly on the table, a symbolic end to the confrontation. Then he turned away, a deliberate diplomatic slight that spoke louder than any words, and walked toward Alex Eala. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and leaned down to say something quietly. Whatever it was, it worked. Her posture softened. Her smile returned, small but genuine. Behind them, the journalist stood humiliated, red-faced, attempting to speak without a microphone, his protests drowned out by what happened next. Applause began, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. It started with the Filipino media, but quickly spread. International journalists joined in. Even some Thai reporters clapped, recognizing that a line had been crossed and firmly redrawn. This was not applause for politics or nationalism. It was applause for restraint, for protection, and for the defense of basic human decency. What had just occurred was unprecedented. A sitting president had physically intervened to protect an athlete from an unfair public attack. In the world of modern diplomacy, such an act should have triggered outrage and formal complaints. Yet something unexpected was happening. The room was not erupting in anger. It was resonating with approval. Within hours, footage of the incident spread rapidly across social platforms. Millions watched the moment again and again. The clip transcended sports and politics, tapping into something deeper. People saw a leader refusing to stay silent while a young person was publicly humiliated. They saw authority used not to dominate, but to protect. And the conversation was only just beginning. What happened inside that press conference room did not end when the applause faded. In many ways, that was only the beginning. As cameras stopped rolling and journalists slowly lowered their equipment, the weight of what had just occurred settled heavily over everyone present. A head of state had crossed an invisible line, not out of rage or ego, but out of conviction. In a world where leaders are trained to avoid confrontation at all costs, President Bongbong Marcos Jr. had chosen action over optics, protection over protocol, and principle over convenience. The shock of that choice rippled far beyond Bangkok within minutes. As footage of the incident hit social media, reactions exploded across the Philippines and beyond. Filipinos around the world shared the clip with pride, not because it humiliated someone else, but because it showed their leader standing firm when it mattered most. Sports fans who had never followed tennis watched in disbelief. Political observers replayed the moment frame by frame. The simplicity of the message resonated across cultures and borders. It was not about tennis rules or officiating debates. It was about drawing a clear line between accountability and cruelty. In the Philippines, the response was immediate and emotional. Alex Eala's gold medal had already ended a 26-year drought, but now her victory carried even deeper meaning. She was no longer just the athlete who won on hostile ground. She became a symbol of resilience under pressure and dignity in the face of unfair attack. Parents spoke about how they wanted their children to grow up with the same composure she displayed. Young athletes saw proof that their country would stand behind them, even when the spotlight turned harsh. Internationally, the reaction was more complex but no less intense. Media organizations debated the ethics of the journalists' conduct. Analysts questioned whether aggressive interviewing had crossed into personal harassment. Diplomatic experts weighed in on the unprecedented nature of a president physically intervening in a press conference abroad. By the strictest standards of protocol, it was a risky move. But public opinion does not always align with diplomatic textbooks, and in this case, the court of public opinion spoke loudly. The viral spread of the video revealed a deep hunger for authenticity in leadership. Viewers did not see a rehearsed statement or a carefully worded press release. They saw a human response to an unfair situation. In an era where leaders often hide behind advisors and scripted language, this unscripted moment felt raw and real. That authenticity transformed the narrative around President Marcos. Regardless of political views, many acknowledged that his action demonstrated a willingness to protect rather than posture. For journalists, the incident triggered uncomfortable but necessary reflection. Press freedom is essential to democracy, but freedom does not equal immunity from ethical responsibility. Tough questions serve a purpose. Personal attacks do not. The distinction became painfully clear in that room. Several veteran reporters later commented that while criticism of performance and systems is fair game, targeting a young athlete's character in the aftermath of a historic achievement crosses an ethical boundary. The Thai journalist at the center of the controversy faced a very different legacy than he likely anticipated. Instead of being remembered for fearless questioning, his name became linked to a moment many viewed as excessive and unjust. His career, built over decades, would now forever include this incident. It served as a cautionary tale about how easily authority, when misused, can collapse under its own weight. Meanwhile, Alex Eala's response in the aftermath further elevated her standing. She did not lash out. She did not demand apologies. She returned home focused on gratitude, thanking supporters and emphasizing respect for the sport. Her restraint reinforced what many already believed. She had won not only with her racket, but with her character. In a moment where anger would have been understandable, she chose grace, and that choice strengthened the impact of everything that had happened. From a broader perspective, this moment raised difficult questions about the relationship between athletes, media, and power. Should young competitors be expected to absorb any level of public criticism without protection? Where does accountability end and exploitation begin? And what role should leaders play when their representatives are treated unfairly on international stages? These questions will not disappear quickly, because the answers shape how future generations experience global competition. The image that endured was not one of confrontation, but of reassurance. President Marcos placing a hand on Alex Eala's shoulder, leaning in to quietly reassure her, became the emotional core of the story. That brief gesture spoke volumes. It reminded viewers that behind medals, rankings, and headlines are human beings, often very young, navigating enormous pressure in front of millions. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. When people look back at the 33rd Southeast Asian Games, they will remember many performances and medal tallies, but one moment will stand above the rest. Not a serve, not a rally, not even the final point. They will remember a microphone being taken away, 12 calm words spoken with authority, and a young champion protected when she needed it most. This moment will appear in documentaries, opinion pieces, and classrooms, not because it was perfect, but because it was powerful. It challenged assumptions about leadership, media conduct, and responsibility. It showed that sometimes the most meaningful acts are not planned or polished, but instinctive and human. At its core, this story is not about silencing voices. It is about stopping harm. It is about recognizing when questioning turns into targeting, and when authority must step in to defend dignity. It is about a leader willing to accept criticism for doing what he believed was right. And it is about a champion who proved that strength is not only measured by trophies, but by composure under fire. So now the conversation turns to you. Was President Marcos right to intervene so directly, to physically end an unfair attack in that moment? Did the journalist cross a line that justified such action? Or should the situation have been handled differently, even if it meant allowing the attack to continue? These are questions that will continue to spark debate, and they deserve thoughtful discussion. One thing, however, is undeniable. The 33rd SEA Games produced a story that transcended sport. It delivered a moment that forced the world to reconsider how we treat young athletes, how media power is exercised, and how leadership is defined under pressure. Alex Eala's gold medal will forever shine, but the protection she received in that press room ensured that her victory remained what it should always be, a celebration of excellence, not a target for cruelty. This is Champions Tennis signing off on a story that will not be forgotten. Stay proud, stay respectful, and remember that true champions are defined not only by how they win, but by how they are defended when the spotlight turns harsh.